Hello everyone. Today we're going to talk about the moderate era of the French Revolution. So we just talked about when everything just went absolutely insane during the French Revolution, the radical phase of it. People being beheaded on a daily basis, the creation of a new religion, all sorts of bizarre things, a new calendar, because during the time of the Reign of Terror, Robespierre and his Jacobin minions are just all over the place with their ideas. Well, once that era of the French Revolution is over, we actually see a more moderate period of time afterwards, where there's going to be some attempt to reform, to fix the situation in France, still using these ideas of the Enlightenment, the Republic having representation from the people. And this period of time of moderation we call the Thermidorean reaction. This is the era of the French Revolution after the Reign of Terror, where moderate government and moderate leadership will try to create a new constitution that will represent the people and get France back on track. So it's during this time period that we really see actual improvement take place. Everyone is really terrified of kind of reverting back to the whole Robespierre era of time. And what we see is people really trying to look for a more stable approach, a more moderate approach that incorporates all people's ideas. So the Jacobins are gone. The Committee of Public Safety is gone. And what ends up happening is almost like the exact opposite of the Reign of Terror. Instead of having members of the Third Estate going around attacking members of the nobility and clergy, we actually see members of the former nobility come back and institute their own Reign of Terror, called the White Terror, where members of the nobility and clergy are looking for revenge against the Third Estate members who may have killed their family members, burned down their estates, done all sorts of other things. It's this reaction to the radical phase, promoted by what we would have called the conservative segment of society in France pre-French Revolution. And this White Terror takes place over the course of a few months. It's not a ton of time, but it's enough to really cement the hatred between the conservative and radical versions and sects of the new French government. So a new government comes into play, called the National Convention. And in this National Convention, one of the first things they decide to do is really just undo everything that is done before. All the laws that are passed during the radical phase and even the early stages of the French Revolution are wiped out. Any laws that may have protected or promoted women's lives, their livelihoods, their rights, all of those are wiped out too. In fact, women will actually take a step farther back than they were even at the start of the French Revolution. So they are viewed as even less citizens. They will create laws that ban prostitution, which you would think is a good thing, but for many people in France, many women in France, particularly in Paris, that is the literal only way that they can provide for themselves. So now they have no ability to provide for themselves, making them starve on the streets. And they pass what they call morality laws to protect the virtue of France. So if you were to do anything against these morality laws, you could be held in jail or charged a fine. So this is going to be a rough period of time for women. There didn't necessarily need to be a lot of evidence for these charges, much like in the cases of the early witch trials, where you just had to really have an accusation, and then you had to, find a way to defend yourself. You have really the same situation happening in France with these morality laws. So this is going to be kind of a struggle for women, but it's still not as crazy as what was happening during the Radical Revolution. But unfortunately, the National Convention just really doesn't do enough to fix the problems. So a new government is put into place to replace the National Convention, which is now, I think, our fifth different version of a government established since the storming of the Bastille in 1789. This one is now called the Directory. It is the final legislative body created as part of the French Revolution. It is this moderate group of individuals who are going to redesign the government of France. They will create a new constitution. that will create a bicameral legislature, much like we have today in the United States, where there are two houses, much like Parliament has two houses in England. There will be two houses of this new French legislature: a Council of Elders, which would simulate much like our Senate, and a Council of 500, which would be much like our House of Representatives. And the executive branch of this new government would be called the Directory. So again, reinforcing these ideas that they're bringing in the thoughts of the enlightened thinkers. Montesquieu talked about the importance of having a separation of powers, that you don't have one group with total control, because then chaos breaks out, and you can have corruption, exactly like what happened during the Radical Revolution. So in the Directory, we do have two branches, a legislative and an executive branch. The legislative branch creates the laws, the Directory enforces them. And the Directory will be made up of 5 different members. And these people will be the structure of France that they need to take that next step forward. So what does this mean for France? Well, the Directory provides the best access to political involvement that the average person in France had received. The middle class will actually have an opportunity to have a say in what's going on in France for the first time. It's not just going to be the nobles, it's not going to just be the clergy or people like that, it's going to be the bourgeoisie finally getting a voice, which is what this whole thing was designed to do in the first place. There will be more safety than what has ever happened during the French Revolution up to this point. There are no more public executions on a daily basis like what you had during the Reign of Terror. Things finally do start to stabilize. And the radical portion that really drove us down that crazy Reign of Terror path are gone. They are driven out of society and politics entirely. There is going to be no more chaotic anarchy anymore. Everything is all about these Enlightenment ideas. Democracy, representation, you have people who have basic natural rights, and even the ideas of people like Adam Smith, who is this economic reformer that comes out of the Enlightenment, that believes in this laissez-faire, unregulated capitalism will be fully embraced by the Directory. And this is going to have some huge implications for the rest of France, because this pure capitalism that they create is going to have a huge impact on the food crisis in France. France, throughout the French Revolution, has been having issues with food. Harvests across Europe have been struggling now for years due to just unfortunate natural situations with changing weather patterns and colder winters. And all of that has really just driven life hard for the average individual in France. It is really a struggle on a daily basis to get food. And without someone trying to provide for that average individual, we start to see more and more people in France become disinterested with the Directory, because they see the Directory as not doing anything to help the poor, the common person, particularly of cities like Paris. And this is going to open the door for one more leader. A person who is going to radically change France forever and really change all of world history forever. And that person is going to be Napoleon Bonaparte. The Directory is going to start losing control of France. And as the food crisis gets progressively worse, they're going to turn to the French military for protection. They are going to be the people who help protect the Directory against riots that break out in the streets. And this is going to provide an opportunity for a young military officer who is going to save the Directory from one of these riots. Napoleon. Everything is unraveling, and here he comes. So with this in mind, we're going to continue to talk about Napoleon, his rise to power, and then eventually his pretty quick fall from grace after a few of his plans go awry. So the French Revolution is entering its final phase. We've gone through the radical portion of it, now the moderate portion of it, and now we're going to go to the Napoleonic portion of it. And with that, you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.